Hello, welcome to our other series in the TOEFL IBT preparation course. And in this series, we're going to focus on the writing section. Let's see our lesson goals for this uh, series. So we're going to take a look at the overview of the writing section, and then I will share some general tips and of course description of the question types in this section, along with the key strategies to tackle those types. And finally, we will go over the performance descriptors to study what your score means. Starting with the overview of the TOEFL IBT writing section. This section will assess your academic writing skills, and then it would like to see from you whether you can present your ideas in writing in a clear and well-organized way. There are two tasks or questions in this section, namely the integrated writing tasks, which will take 20 minutes. And in this task, as you can see from the description, you will be required to read a passage, listen to a lecture about the same topic, and then write to report or summarize and relate the ideas from those two sources in your essay. The second task is called the independent writing task. This task takes 30 minutes to complete, and it will ask you to write from your knowledge and experience. This means that the ideas that you include in your essay will be based on your personal opinion. In total, to complete these two tasks, you will need 50 minutes, and your responses will be typed on a computer keyboard at the test center. Here are some useful tips to prepare for taking the writing section of the TOEFL IBT. So first, you need to practice paraphrasing words, phrases, sentences, and even an entire paragraph, because this kind of skill will be required in the two tasks of the writing section. You also need to understand how they score your response so that you can anticipate uh, the challenges and also prepare uh, responses that will meet the criteria that they require to give you the highest score. Practice outlining before writing and following the outline to write your response. And don't forget to improve your grammar and vocabulary so that you can show that you have the ability to use not just basic structure sentences, but also complex ones and academic vocabulary. Of course, before you respond, you need to make sure that you understand what the question is asking you. Uh, so make sure you understand the question completely before starting to write. Here are the question types of the TOEFL IBT writing section. The first one is called the integrated writing task. So you will need to read a passage about an academic topic. You will be given 3 minutes to do this. And then after that, you will hear a short lecture about the same topic. And then in the end, you will have to summarize and explain the points in both sources um, by drawing the relationship between the ideas from the two sources. You will be given 20 minutes, and the common phrasing of the question will look like the examples on the screen. And here's an example of how the passage will look like. And then after that, you will get the lecture. And of course, in the end, you will then have the 20 minutes to write your response. And as you can see there, you can still see the text at the time of your writing. The lecture, however, will not be accessible once it is over. Okay, and then the second type is the independent writing task. In this task, you will write an essay to respond to the question that will ask about your opinion on an issue or topic. And the common phrasing will be like this. Now, keep in mind that a good response for this task will be around 300 words. That said, if you want to write more than 300 words, that is also possible because there is no maximum word limit to your response. You can see the example on the right. So those are the question types. What are the key strategies to handle them or tackle them effectively? Let's see. So the first one is you need to improve your typing skills because in the real test, the test center will provide a unit of computer set, which includes the keyboard for you to type your response in the writing section. So try to type, practice mastering typing with both hands, and be familiar with the QWERTY keyboard because that's the kind of keyboard that you will get in the real test. And then also it can help you to prepare better by practicing on different computers since the computer that you will use in the test is most likely a different one. So you will need to be able to get used to the new keyboard effectively. The second strategy is to anticipate familiar topics for the independent task. So keep in mind that for the task two, the independent task, you will be asked a question that will require you to respond using your personal opinion. So if you get some ideas about the topics that you might get before you take the test, it will be really, really helpful. And to help you do that, here are some examples. So in the category of description and explanation, here are examples of how the question will look like. You will be asked to describe and explain something or someone, such as an ideal friend, a good roommate, good parent, beautiful city, and so on. On the agreement and disagreement category, you will be asked to state whether you agree or disagree with a statement. And then after that, of course, you will need to describe the reasons and the supporting details why you agree or disagree with the statement. And here are some examples of such a statement. For preference, it's quite similar. It's quite similar with the agreement and disagreement, but this type or category will give you two options, and then you will need to choose one of which you will prefer. And of course, to explain your reasons and examples and supporting details for your preference. And the last one, about condition category, you will be given a condition and you will need to respond to the question that basically asks what you would do in such a condition, as you can see from the examples on the screen. Okay, and then the next strategy, strategy number 3, which is about the independent task question. It can help you by choosing an opinion or a statement that is easiest to support. So this is especially relevant to the preference and agreement and disagreement categories. So do not waste time by trying to choose which of the two things that you will need to support in your essay. Instead, try to think immediately about how much you can expand or extend in your essay to support either of the two sides. And if you consider one of the options will be easier to support with more reasons and examples, for example, then you should consider taking that side immediately. So you don't waste more time in choosing. And you can use your time more on developing or writing your essay. And this is especially very useful because your opinion is not one of the criteria that the raters will assess. They will not judge whether your opinion is correct or not, but they will focus on how you support your opinion with plenty of reasons and examples. Strategy number 4 is to include an outline sentence with parallel structure. So in the introduction of your essay, aim to include not only a thesis statement, which means the sentence that states your opinion or choice in response to uh, the question, but also try to include a brief outline sentence. And this brief outline sentence is aiming to provide a track for your readers to follow when they read your essay. And this should be given in parallel structure to show to the raters that you have not just the ability to come up with outline sentence, but also the structure or grammar knowledge to use effective outline sentence. Here are some examples for you. So imagine the question is asking, do you agree or disagree with the statement? Now, a good opening sentence or opening parts of your essay will be like this. Although the life of people when my grandparents were children had its own advantages, I agree that the today's life offers more ease and comfort. So this is your thesis statement, along with some concession. After the thesis statement, where you state your choice, then we see an example sentence that outlines the essay. And let's read the outline sentence together. I think so because today we have the internet, more affordable products, and wider career options. So if you pay attention, you see that the structure of the three items here is the same. It's a noun, another noun, and the third noun. So that's what parallel structure means. Now, let's see another example of a parallel structure using different structure. And this time it's using word form. Okay, the similar word form. So I think so because of the internet availability, products affordability, and career options flexibility today. So basically, the idea is the same, but the structure is using a different form. Now, the third example here is using the form of gerund or verb ing as a noun. So Having the internet, buying cheaper products, and choosing from more career options are the main things that make our life easier compared to the past. Okay. All right. Let's continue with the next strategy. To expand your essay and make sure that you reach the expected length, you need to prepare facts, examples, and experience, especially for the independent task. So prepare these supporting details to make sure you reach the target length that they require. Here's an example. So imagine the question is asking about this statement, whether you agree or disagree. And then in the example response here, we can see that the student responds using experience over here with the opening phrase, in my experience. Here in the next example, we see an example of supporting detail using evidence. And here you can see research confirms that so and so. And then another example here is using an example. And you can see the opening phrase, for example, which is a common phrase to introduce this kind of detail. All right, moving on to strategy number 6. Try to use formal transition words. To create coherence and cohesion in your essay, it's very important to use transition words. And for your information, coherence and cohesion are one of the key criteria that the raters will see to give you the highest score. And then for maximum impact or outcome with your transition words use, aim to use formal and more academic ones. For example, use however instead of but. Use therefore instead of so. And use moreover instead of the basic connecting word and. Furthermore, you can improve this by using semicolon before you use the transition word and followed by a comma afterwards. Here are some examples for you. Here is an example for however, furthermore, moreover, nevertheless, and therefore. Continuing with the strategy number 7. Summarize the reading passage in the integrated task. You will be given 3 minutes to read the short passage at the beginning of the task 1, the integrated task. Now, make sure that you get all the necessary details to be able to summarize the reading passage in your first few sentences in your essay. And to do this, you can focus on the major points or the most important details from the short text. And to help you identify the major points, you can focus on the first sentences of the paragraphs. Aim to restate the major points of the reading in about 100 words. Now, let's take a look at an example. So these are the key parts, the first sentences in the paragraph. And if you take the key information, you can get a summary like this. Don't forget to use your own words. Do not simply copy the same words from the text. Strategy number 8, paraphrase and do not repeat the same words. You get no score for using exactly the same words from the reading or the lecture, especially in the integrated task. So to get the maximum point from that, aim to use synonyms. Now, synonyms is one of the techniques in paraphrasing, which means to explain the same idea using different words. Now, let's see the common four techniques of paraphrasing. The first one is by using synonyms, as I already explained. The next one is by changing the form of the words. So in case it's difficult for you to find the synonym of the word in the text, you can still paraphrase using the same words, but try to use different form of the word. In the third technique, you can change the structure. For example, in the source, it's using the active sentence. In your essay, you should try to use the passive sentence. And the last one is by incorporating or using all of these different techniques at once. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to study these techniques in more details. Okay, now strategy number 9. Learn the verbs to express authors or lecturers' point of view. For the integrated task, you will be quoting or referring to the text and the lecture's idea a lot. And in doing so, you will need these different kinds of verbs. Therefore, you need to be ready by knowing these kinds of verbs. And here are some examples. When the text or the lecture seem doubtful, you can use these verbs to quote their ideas. When they sound certain, you can use this. When they sound neutral, this, and negative, which means they contradict or they disagree with one another, then you can use these verbs. Strategy number 10 is to show a variety of sentence structures, both basic and complex structures. One of the key criteria of the scoring in the writing section will be your use of language. And language use consists of your grammar and your vocabulary knowledge. So for the grammar part, make sure that you show the raters that you have the ability or the skill to use different forms of structures and not just the basic ones. Here are some examples of such complex structures. First one is the series with parallel structure, as you can see in the examples. And then the relative clauses to give additional information of an object, usually before the clause. And then the compound sentences, which basically mean a sentence with multiple clauses using the fan voice connectors. And then the complex sentences with adverbial clauses, with contrast clause, effect, reason, condition, time, place, and so on. And then the last one is the conjoined sentences, which means two sentences coherently combined by a transition word. The next strategy is to make sure that your grammar is correct. Avoid common grammar errors, especially those that are usually made by students in the low intermediate levels, because that will be an indicator that many raters use to readily or immediately put you in that level. So to do this, make sure that you spare some time, for example, 5 minutes at the end of your response time for editing and proofreading. Be careful with unfamiliar grammar forms. Do not try to impress the rater by using grammar forms or structures that you are not sure will be clear for them. Because if there is confusion, remember, it will be considered a major error and it will deduct a lot of your points from your score. Now, speaking of these grammar uh, problems, it is ideal for us to spend some time learning some basics of the grammar to help prepare yourself better. So let's do that. Starting with the first grammar rule, subject-verb agreement. Make sure your subject and verb agree with one another in your essay. And this includes using singular verbs for the third person singular subjects, such as he, she, and it. And of course, for the plural ones, make sure you also use plural verbs to agree with them. Here are some examples. The subject here is stack ranking, and it's a singular subject. Therefore, the verb has to be in the singular form in the present tense. Here, on the other hand, we have plural subjects, employees. Therefore, your verb should be are instead of is. So that's the example. Now, let's have a quick practice with 3 questions about the subject-verb agreement. Go ahead and try to answer the questions. You can pause the video if you want more time. And then after that, we will check your answers together. All right, so what's your answer for number 1? Okay, if you see the subject here in the second clause, we have the subject who, which is also the connector of the second clause. And then the verb for who is failed. We don't, however, have the subject for students, which is the subject in the first clause. Therefore, we need to choose a verb in the options that agree with that subject. And we can see that the subject is plural. Therefore, the verb should be are. In the second question, we see that the verb in the second clause is missing, and the subject is specimens. Therefore, we need to choose a verb that agrees with the subject specimens. And there are 2 possible answers for that. We have found in B and were found in D. Now, have found and were found have different types of sentence, which is active and passive. So you need to understand the meaning of the sentence in order to decide which between B and D is the correct one. And this, if you pay attention carefully, is a passive sentence. Therefore, we need to choose the option D. And then the third question here, we are missing the part of the verb that goes with increased, and the subject is the population. Population is singular, therefore we need to choose a verb that is also singular and can go with the part increased. And the answer for that will be has. Moving on to the next basic grammar rule, verbal and nominal sentence. A lot of students are often mistaken by these two different basic types of sentences. So let's learn what they actually mean. Verbal and nominal sentences both derive from the basic rule that a sentence in the English language or an independent clause must have a verb. Therefore, in the verbal sentence, we will always find an action verb, such as find, enjoy, mention, speak, study, sleep, speak, talk, etc. Now, on the nominal sentence, however, there is no action verb. And but still, you must have a verb to make your sentence complete. That's why they invented the verb be. So the verb be, am, is, are, was, were, etc. They are verbs that are used when there are no action verbs needed in a sentence or a clause. And here are the examples. In the verbal sentence, we see zoos often find or accept injured or abused animals. The verbs are or, find, and accept. Now, in the nominal sentence example, on the right-hand side, we see that there is no action verb. The majority of the animals are in the category of ruminants. Imagine if we don't have the verb be over here. The sentence wouldn't be complete. Therefore, we need the verb be. Now, a lot of the students, they make the mistakes based on that rule. The first common one is a missing verb, especially in the nominal sentence. In the nominal sentence, often students forgot to make sure they include the verb be to complete their sentence or clause. Here's an example. The passage explains that penguins in the region during their whole mating season. So you see the clause after that is not complete because there is no verb for the subject penguins. Therefore, to make it correct, we need to put the verb be for the subject penguins. Now, another common error from this type of sentence is double verbs, which is usually the verb be followed by base verb or past tense. Here's an example. The lecturer was disagreed with the text in that the phenomenon is illusory. So you see, disagreed is a past tense and was is also a verb. And here, the student mistakenly thought that you need to use was for the past, and then you need to use the past also for the past, making it a double verb. Now, the correct form of this wrong sentence will be the lecturer disagreed with the text. So you needn't use was since disagreed is already a valid verb for the sentence. Now, let's practice analyzing these sentences, whether they are correct or incorrect. And if it's incorrect, try to correct them. Ready? Go ahead. All right, now let's check your answers. Number one, is it correct or incorrect? If you pay attention to the sentence here, you will see that there are two clauses. The historic events were important and the country celebrates the day. And if you check the subject and the verbs in each of the clauses, you will see that there is a missing verb in the first clause. Therefore, this sentence is incorrect. Now, can you correct it? Well, it's simple. Make sure you add a verb in the first sentence, first clause, and that will be is. How about number two? Is it correct or incorrect? You see that there are two clauses in this sentence, and the first clause subject is the scientist with the verb argue, and then the second clause with the subject the results and the verb remain. And all of them are complete and all of them are agreeing with one another, making the sentence correct. The third sentence, on the other hand, is also incorrect because the subject, as you can see over here, Harvard, is followed by two verbs, is and attracts, which are both shouldn't be going together. So if you correct the sentence, then you need to erase the verb be is, because attracts is enough to explain the information. The next grammar rule is about using the tenses. Be consistent in using your tenses in your writing. If you use the present tense to discuss scientific facts, then make sure that all of the parts where you discuss scientific facts, you maintain using the present tenses. Now, if you use the past tenses to describe what you heard and what you read in the two sources, especially in the integrated task, then make sure it's consistent throughout your essay. And now, in terms of using these two types of tenses, make sure that you understand the forms of the verbs. So in the present tenses, make sure you use s at the end of your verb when the subject is singular. Make sure your verb for the present continuous is using the to be and verb ing. Use the modal verb correctly with verb infinitive after the modal verbs, and then use the passive form also consistently following the correct form for the present tenses. Same thing with the past tenses. Use the past tense correctly, past continuous, past perfect, and the passive past forms. Here is a quick practice. Try to complete the sentences using the verb in brackets. And be careful, pay attention to the tenses, forms that you need to use. So let's check your answers. The first one, since this is in the past, then we need the past form of be, which is were, since this subject is plural. In the second sentence, we see that it's something um, that is a fact, right? And for facts, we normally use the present simple tense to describe that. Therefore, what we need to do is to add the suffix s for the verb promote, since the subject is a singular subject. And then the last one here, you can see that it's talking about something ongoing and something temporarily happening. Therefore, we need to use the continuous, the present continuous tense. And it's a passive sentence, so the best verb will be are being conducted, because the subject is also plural. All right. Okay, let's continue with the next strategy. For the next strategy, remember the three key steps: summarize, transition, and relate for the integrated task or the task one in the writing section. To provide an essay that can meet the highest criteria for the raters, then these three steps will help you. So organize your essay following the three steps. The first one will be to summarize the reading. Here's an example. So summarize the reading text in around 100 or less than 100 words. And then introduce a transition sentence to signal the lecture support or contradiction to the ideas in the reading. And then the third step is to explain the different points of views from the reading and the lecture by relating the ideas point by point. Strategy number 13. Use the 5-paragraph essay format for the independent task or the task 2 in the writing section. Here's an example. Imagine the question is asking, government should fund space exploration or projects on Earth. Which would you prefer? If you follow the 5-paragraph essay format, then your paragraph 1 should be introducing your choice and giving an outline of your 3 ideas to support your choice, as you can see on the screen now. Paragraph 1 will be covering the first idea or the first reason for choosing your preference. The second idea, the third paragraph will be introducing your second idea or second reason, which is the depletion of natural resources. And then your next paragraph covers the third idea or reason. And finally, the last paragraph with brief conclusion. Strategy number 14, keep an eye on your time. Be careful and remember that the time in the writing section will be limited. So make sure you plan your timing before you begin. And here is a recommended timing that you can follow to manage your time. For task 1, since you only have 20 minutes, then you can allocate 4 minutes for your planning at the beginning, 12 minutes for your writing, and 4 minutes for the editing and proofreading at the end. For the independent task, the second task, which 30 minutes is given, you can spend 5 minutes to plan your essay, 20 minutes to write, and 5 minutes to edit or proofread at the end. Strategy number 15 is to pay attention to the little details, namely the capitalization and punctuation. Some raters will consider these minor errors, but you need to be careful because some also might be influenced by these basic mistakes. They will consider them as evidence of low-level students. So if you can afford it, if you have the time, make sure that you correct them before submitting. Here are some basic lessons to help you, starting with indentation. By using indentation, as seen on the example, it will help your raters visually to follow your development of ideas. Using period to indicate the end of your sentence. Commas to separate the items in a series. Colon to explain ideas with more emphasis. And capital letters to introduce names, proper names, and first or beginning sentence in your essay. The next strategy is to think like a rater. Similar to the speaking section, you need to avoid the major errors. Because you need to remember that there are two kinds of errors that the raters will expect: major errors and minor errors. The minor errors are things like punctuation, um, misspelling, capitalization, etc. Those errors normally do not cause confusion. It will, your ideas will stay clear, even if you make those minor errors. Major errors, on the other hand, are those that will confuse or distract the rater, and you really need to avoid that. Okay, now here are some examples of the two types of errors. So imagine that these two sentences convey the same idea, the same point. In the first one, which is considered a minor error, the student forgot to write S at the end of the noun type to indicate the plural form, since there are three types. In the second example, which is a major error, the student forgot or misspelled the word three with tree, which significantly changes the meaning of the idea or the point in the sentence. And this will confuse or distract the raters. Make sure you don't make this kind of error. And then still about thinking like a rater, familiarize yourself with the evaluator's checklist. And this checklist, you can see an example here, will give you the score 3. For your information, the highest score in writing section, the TOEFL IBT is 5 out of 5. So 3 is a medium score with this criteria. If you want to get the score 4, then you need to make sure that your response addresses the topic and the task. It is organized, although it may not be fully developed. Your sentences are usually logical and connected by transitions. Although some of your content is incomplete, they are accurate. And the details and examples are provided, although they are not fully supporting the topic sentence. It is mostly comprehensible. You showed a good range of vocabulary and varieties of structures in intermediate level. You may make some errors, but they should not be interfering the meaning. And the length of your essay fulfills the standard or the expected amount or number of words, all as uh, in a good range. Now, to get the highest score, which is 5, you need to upgrade those performances into these criteria. Your essay responds to the topic. It is well organized and developed. All of your sentences are logically connected by transitions. It is accurate. The details and examples support your topic sentence. The meaning is easy to comprehend. You showed wide range and varied forms of vocabulary and sentence structures. Your grammar mistakes are only minor ones, and it is in a good length. And the last strategy, of course, is to keep practicing. Make sure that you do a lot of or plenty of practice tests so that you get more experience and you are be more prepared. Don't forget to apply the strategies that you've learned, especially the ones from our course. Keep a note of your challenges, and as you come closer to the test day, make sure you focus on them. Tackle. Now, let's see the performance descriptor for the writing section in the TOEFL IBT. The highest level is the advanced level. You are in this level if your score is in the range of 24 up to 30, which shows that you have the criteria to be considered a level C1 user of English. If you can get 29 or 30, that is a likely possibility to be considered a C2 proficiency language user. And basically, this shows that you can write in English on a wide range of academic and non-academic topics with confidence and clarity. You can read the further details about the level by pausing the video if you would like. In the lower level than the advanced, we have the high intermediate level with the score range of 17 up to 23, and you see of our level of B2. This shows that you can write in English well on general or familiar topics. But when the topic is more complex or academic, you can only convey most of the main ideas. In the low intermediate level, on the other hand, it shows that you can produce simple written texts, but only on general or familiar topics. In the lower level from that is the basic level, which shows that you can communicate very basic information in written English. And the lowest level is the below basic level, which means simply you haven't got the ability to be considered as the basic level. And that is the end of our lesson for this series. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another session.